Need you to hear this before your next IEP meeting. And it's May, so it should be coming up. You're not just a parent sitting at the table. You are a member of your child's IEP team, an equal member with the same right to ask questions, request evaluations, disagree with recommendations, and push for what your child actually needs, just as much as anyone else in that room. Did anyone tell you that before your first meeting? Because most parents walk into their first IEP meeting not knowing what it is, not knowing what they would be allowed to ask for, not knowing that they can say no or that no is not actually the final word. And the school, they know that, which means the most powerful thing that you can do before you ever sit down at that table is to know exactly what you are walking into. And that's what today's video is all about. Welcome back, caregivers. This is Caregiver the Health Boss. I am Michelle. Whether you are heading into your first IEP meeting or it's your 15th, today's video will change how you show up. All right, so what is an IEP meeting? Let's actually start from the beginning. An IEP stands for Individualized Education Plan. It is a legal binding document, and that word legally matters. That outlines the specific educational support services and accommodations that your child is entitled to receive in order to access their education. So, not the education a school finds convenient to provide, not the education that your child is actually entitled to under federal law, specifically the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, also known as the IDEA. Every child with a qualifying disability has the right to a free, appropriate public education in the least restrictive environment as possible. That is the law. It's not a favor, not a program that the school is just doing out of goodwill. It is a legal requirement. So, understanding that one thing changes everything about how you show up to every IEP meeting you will ever attend. So, in this video, I'm going to cover 6 things that you need to know before every IEP meeting. So, the first thing that you'll need to know is that you have the right to request an IEP meeting at any time. You don't have to wait for the annual review. If something is not working, if your child is struggling, if a service is not being delivered as written, if you want to add a goal, if something changed medically, you can request a meeting in writing. Please make sure that is always in writing. Send an email, keep a copy, because a written request creates a paper trail, and that paper trail creates accountability. The school has a legal obligation to respond to you, to your written request within a specific time frame. And that time frame does vary by state. So I need you to look up your state's requirement. Do not wait to be invited to advocate for your child. Request the meeting. That is your right. All right, so number 2, you are allowed to bring somebody with you. IEP meetings can be overwhelming. You walk in and there are 6, 8, 10 people sitting on one side of the table: the special education coordinator, the general education teacher, the school psychologist, the occupational therapist, the speech therapist, an administrator. And then there's you. So you are allowed to bring an advocate, a friend who knows the process, a parent mentor from a disability organization, an attorney, if the situation calls for it. You do not have to sit at that table alone. And if you cannot bring someone in person, ask if someone can join by phone. Whoever you bring, tell them their role beforehand, and they are there to take notes. Are they there to take notes? Are they there to be emotional support? To ask questions you might not think of? Assign a role to them. And then once you assign that role, make sure you use them. All right. Number three, I need you to read the IEP before you sign it. This one sounds obvious, and yet parents sign IEP documents in the meeting under social pressure without having have read every single page. Please do not do this. You have the right to take the document home, review it carefully, and return with your signature or your questions later. And I've done this many a times. The school may tell you that the services cannot begin until the IEP is signed. That is sometimes true. It is also sometimes a pressure tactic. So I just need you to know the difference. What you are looking for when you review the document, do the goals actually reflect what you discussed? Are the services listed the same ones that were agreed to during the meeting? And are the minutes per week correct? Is the placement appropriate for your child's needs? And are the accommodations specific enough to be measurable? Vague goals cannot be evaluated, and goals that cannot be evaluated cannot be enforced. So if the goal says, for example, Johnny will improve his reading, that's not a goal. That's a wish. A goal says by the end of the EEP period, by the end of the EEP period, Johnny will read at grade level passages with an 80% accuracy across three consecutive um, assessments. So let me just say that better and repeat it again. Our goal says by the end of the IEP period, Johnny will read grade level passages with an 80% accuracy across three consecutive assessments. So these goals should be specific, measurable, and time bound. If the goal is your child and your child's IEP are not written that way, ask for them to be rewritten before you sign. Do not sign if it is not clear enough. Okay, so number four, you can disagree, and a disagreement is not the end of a conversation. If the team recommends something that you do not believe is appropriate for your child, you do not have to agree. You can say, hear the recommendation. I'm not in agreement. I would like to discuss further before we move forward. And that's it. You do not need to be confrontational. You do not need to have a kind of argument ready on the spot. You just need to be clear that you're not signing off on something that you haven't fully processed. And if you reach an impasse, if the school is recommending something that you fundamentally do not believe is right for your child, you have options beyond this meeting room. You can request mediation. You can file a state complaint. You can request a due process hearing. These are legal processes. They exist specifically for this situation. And knowing that they exist means that you never have to feel trapped by a decision in a conference room. All right, so number five, related services are part of the IEP. They are not extras. This one is the most misunderstood part of an IEP process. Related services, including speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, counseling, transportation. These are not add ons the school provides if it's convenient. If your child requires a related service in order to benefit from that education, it must be included in the IEP and it must be provided at no cost to you. So if the school tells you that they don't have staff to provide the service your child's IEP requires, that the school that is a school's problem, not a child problem. Obligation does not disappear because the resource is limited. Know what your child qualifies for, know what is written into that document, and track whether it's being delivered or not, because there's a significant difference between what the IEP says and what your child is actually receiving. And families who track the delivery are the family who catches the gaps. So I'll give you a great example. We had the school tell us that the school that my child was going to, because the class was on the second floor and he's in a wheelchair and the elevator breaks down, that they didn't know how he was going to get to class. That's not a me problem. That's a school problem, and I need you guys to get that fixed prior to first day of school. Do not tell me my child cannot make it to class, and it needs to be fixed because now that's a safety issue, because if my child is actually on the second floor, you need to make sure that he can get out safely. So I brought all of these things up to the school. We had another situation where the IEP states that he has to be on an air conditioned bus. Well, we found out that the bus was not air conditioned. We reached out to the school and made them enforce it. So, just an example. Bring your documentation every single time. Um, so every IEP meeting should have two things. You should have two things on your side of the table. A notepad for the meeting of what's discussed, what was agreed to, and any follow-up that's needed. And your child's documentation, medical history, therapy records, outside evaluations, any private sessions that you've done. The Health Boss Planner is a great document to have on your table side. Any outside evaluations carry weight. Private speech therapist assessment and individual psychological review evaluation. Documentation from a specialist. These can support your position when the school's internal assessment does not tell the full story. So, I learned early on that walking into a meeting about Justin's care with documentation in hand changed how the conversation was received. You can go from being a parent with concern to being an informed advocate with evidence. So these two things are very different seats at the table. And the second one definitely gets better outcomes every single time. I did have the school do an evaluation on Dallas, and they told me that this child did not have ADHD. And during he was 3, doing his evaluation, which I have on video, they were evaluating him, and every time he got an answer right, he jumped up and he rolled across the floor. He high-fived the wall, and he came back, and he just like was his own cheering section. And again, we got an outside evaluator to do his evaluation. And yes, of course, he did indeed have ADHD. So again, um, so I just want to reframe how you think about the IEP process. So for a lot of families, it feels adversarial. So like you're fighting for something that should not require a fight. And I agree. And sometimes, honestly, it does feel that way. But the parents who get the best outcomes from for their children are not always the ones who fought the hardest. The ones who came the most prepared. They are the ones. Okay. So who knew the law? Who had documentation? Who asked the right questions? Who stayed calm when the room got uncomfortable? Who followed up in writing after every single meeting? Preparation is your power, not volume, not emotion, preparation. And there is the faith piece that I want to leave you with. You were not assigned to your child randomly. The instinct that tells you something isn't right, that a service is not being delivered, that a placement is not working, that your child is capable of more than the plan reflects. Trust it, document it, bring it to the table, and do not leave the room until your child's needs have been heard. Your child spends a significant portion of their life in school. What happens in that building, the supports they receive, the goals that they are held to, the services they access, shapes the outcomes that extend far beyond graduation. That IEP is not paperwork. It is a roadmap for your child's education, and you, as their parent, are the most important person who gets to shape that what that roadmap says. So before your next IEP meeting, read your current IEP from cover to cover. Write down every single question that you have. Bring your documentation and walk in knowing you belong at that table, not as a guest, but as a member of the team, because you are. So drop a comment and tell me, what is the one thing about IEP meetings that you wish someone had told you earlier? I will be in the comments all week. Share this video with a parent who has an IEP meeting coming up. This might be the exact thing that they need to walk in that room ready. So subscribe, because next week we're going even deeper into how to organize your child's complete medical history so that documentation is always working for you. I'll see you in the next one. Okay, until next time, caregiver.